Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Low Budget Review Show. I'm your host, Eric Smith, and today I'm talking about the Secret Wars expansion for Legendary Marvel deck building game. This is Volume 1. It's from Upper Deck, and it's the second big box expansion for the Legendary Marvel deck building game. There have been a lot of small ones, but this is just the second big one. It retails for around $50, I believe. It just came out relatively recently, as of this recording. And for those of you who don't know the Legendary Marvel deck building game, I did review it quite some time ago. And I'll put a link for that up here somewhere. This is an expansion, so you do need the base set to play this. And really quickly, deck building games, everybody starts with the same weak deck. In this case, it's 12 cards. You use whatever. It's always different in different deck building games, but you recruit new and more powerful cards. One of the unique things about Legendary is that there are two forms of currency, or whatever you want to call it. You can generate recruit points that you use to get your new heroes and more powerful heroes. And then there are attack or fight that you use to defeat villains. Legendary is a cooperative game. The game plays against you. There's a mastermind. There's a scheme. The mastermind has master strikes. When those cards come up, bad things happen. The scheme has scheme twists. When those come up, bad things happen. So everybody's playing together to try to stop the scheme, defeat the mastermind. And there are victory points on the villains and the mastermind. So at the end of the game, even though you either all win or lose together, you can have an ultimate hero, as I call them. Whoever has the most victory points in their victory pile wins. Again, for a more detailed look at the base game, check out my earlier review. I want to talk about this. That's why we're here. Great artwork there. I love that cover. And it's only Volume 1. I have no idea what's going to be in Volume 2. So, first of all, I'm going to go over the new characters. I think I'll hold off on showing you cards until after I've gone through this whole list. But the new heroes in this expansion are Doctor Strange, Namor the Submariner. Just reading a list here off the side of my computer. Doctor Strange, Namor the Submariner, Ultimate Spider-Man, the Miles Morales version, I believe it is, from the costume, Black Panther, Proxima Midnight, Thanos, Superior Iron Man, Magic, Lady Thor, and that's what it says on the card. It says Lady Thor, Apocalyptic Kitty Pryde, Captain Marvel, Black Bolt, Maximus, and Old Man Logan. As for the masterminds, there are 4 new masterminds. You have Madeline Pryor, the Goblin Queen, Nimrod, the Superior Sentinel, Wasteland Hulk, and my personal favorite, Zombie Green Goblin. Yes, there are Marvel zombies in this game. And it does add a couple of other cards, sidekick cards, and ambition cards, and I'll get to those in just a moment. I believe every expansion has added something new to the game. One of the expansions added teleport, which if a card in your hand says teleport, you can set it aside and add it to your next hand if you choose to. One of the expansions added bribe. If a villain says bribe on it, you can use both fight and recruit points to defeat that villain. The Guardians of the Galaxy expansion added shards, and I think that's the one that added, I can't remember what they call them, but they're kind of like permanent cards, or artifact cards, that's what they are. cards that once you play them, they stay in play and you can use them every turn. The Spider-Man expansion added Wall Crawl, which means when you recruit a hero, if it says Wall Crawl on it, you can put it on top of your deck instead of into your discard pile. So this game adds a few new things. First of all, it adds Sidekicks, which is a deck of cards that they're all exactly the same, and you can add them to. You don't have to just use them in this expansion. You basically add them to your game. This is what it looks like. I do like that artwork. You got Cap and Bucky there. It costs 2. That's the cost. Again, watch the other video. I go into all the things. But anyway, this says you may return this card to the Sidekick stack. If you do, draw 2 cards. So that's not too bad. You can only recruit up to 1 Sidekick each turn using your recruit. So that's it. Doesn't matter how many recruit points you have. You can only get recruit 1 Sidekick. There are cards that allow you to gain Sidekicks. So you can gain multiple during your turn, but you can only recruit 1. So that's a nice little card. In the last game we played, the other players were recruiting Sidekicks like crazy. Well, gaining Sidekicks, I should say, because they had a lot of cards that would allow them to they gain 3-4 Sidekicks in a turn. And then if you get 2 or 3 Sidekicks in your hand and you're drawing 2 cards for each one that you play, these can be some nice little cards. Full disclosure, even though the other players were doing that, they still lost. Now wait a minute, you say. What do you mean they still lost? Shouldn't you mean we still lost? Well, that's the other big thing that's added to this game. We now have the ability for a player to play as the mastermind and play against the other people. And what you've got to do that is a deck of ambition cards. They all have the same picture. I love that artwork as well. Some great villains on there. I love Mysterio. And they have a fight number on them. So if a player chooses to play as the mastermind, they get the same starting deck as everybody else. But on their turn, instead of flipping over a villain and adding a villain to the city, which is what every player does, the first thing they do on their turn is flip over a card from the villain stack, add it to the city, or if it's a Scheme Twist or a Master Strike, you do whatever those things do. Again, watch the old video for all these details. Anyway, whoever's playing as the mastermind, instead of flipping over a card from the villain stack, they flip over an ambition card. This is the starting ambition. They start with this card. It always stays in their ambition lineup. They can only have 4 cards maximum in their ambition lineup. So if they have 4, when they flip a new one, they decide which one they're going to discard. They could discard the new one. They could discard one of the old ones. Basically, they can discard anything but this one, the starting ambition. So what happens is when the mastermind player plays their hand, the cards from their hand, they can still recruit heroes from the headquarters. Just think of it as turning the heroes to the side of evil. But they can use their fight, and they can still fight villains in the city. Sometimes when you fight a villain, there's an advantage. I know, like Dr. Octopus, when you fight Dr. Octopus, at the end of your turn, you get to draw 8 cards instead of 6, I think it is, something like that. Maybe as the mastermind, I don't want one of the good guys to get that card, so I'll fight and defeat Dr. Octopus. But you can use your fight points to play your ambition cards. So this one would take 5 fight to play. And this just says play a card from the villain deck, keep this card in the ambition row. So I could pay 5 fight and add a villain or play a card from the villain deck. So if it's a villain, it goes in the city. If it's a Scheme Twist, it does Scheme Twisty things. If it's Master Strike, it does Master Strikey things. And if you're playing as the Mastermind, I want to make sure I get this right. It says Master Strikes, ambush effects, and escape effects don't affect the Mastermind player. However, other card effects like schemes, heroes, and villain fight effects still work on the Mastermind player. So we happened to play a scheme that didn't actually affect the players, so I didn't have to worry about that. Fight effects, hero and villain fight effects, well, that's neither here nor there. So yes, I played the Mastermind because that's how I roll. I wanted to be the bad guy, and we played, it was Zombie Green Goblin, because I gotta play Zombie Green Goblin. Excuse me. There are a bunch of new schemes. Does this tell me how many? 8 new schemes in this game. Some of them are really interesting. The one that we played, I thought was going to be kind of easy, but it was really tough. And as I said, the hero players lost. And there are, because this is Secret Wars, there are sort of multi-dimensional schemes, all sorts of really interesting new schemes. And now I'm going to show you some of the other cards here. Not every hero, not every villain, just some of the cards with artwork that I like. Oh, before I get to that, another element, there are a couple of henchmen. Let's make sure they're... no, there's one henchman group, the Thor Corps, and there's one villain group, the Villain Manhattan, Different Earths. Basically, it's the Ultimates. So this one henchman group, the Thor Corps, and this villain group, the Ultimates. They're in the villain deck. They go into the city as villains, but when you fight them, you recruit them as heroes. Instead of putting them in your victory pile, they go into your deck, which I think is really cool. I like that a lot. Another reason the Mastermind player might fight somebody in the city, because they don't want the hero players to be able to recruit these cards. And there's another mechanic called something Cross-Dimensional Rampage. We haven't played any characters with that. Basically, I'm just reading from the instructions now. Cross-Dimensional Hulk Rampage means each player reveals one of their Hulk heroes or a Hulk card in their victory pile or gains a wound. And there's also Cross-Dimensional Wolverine, I think Cross-Dimensional Thor. So if it's Thor, you have to reveal a Thor card, obviously. If it's Wolverine, you have to reveal a Wolverine card. So that's there. With the zombie cards, there's a mechanic called Rise of the Living Dead. If that comes up, all the players check their victory piles. If the top card has Rise of the Living Dead on it, which is basically the zombie cards, it goes back in the city. Because they're zombies, they come back from the dead. Let me just look this over. Make sure I covered. I think that's about everything. There are 2 new hero groups, the Illuminati and the Cabal. There are no multi-class cards. I'm not going to get into all that. Again, for details, watch the other video. Man, I'm really selling that thing. Now we'll get to some of these cards and the artwork. So, unfortunately, Doctor Strange, I'm not completely enamored with the artwork on any of the cards, but I do love the character. So, that one's cool. Black Bolt, an interesting character. There are, now, if you're familiar with the game at all, you know the cards all have a game text. In this expansion now, I think there are 2 heroes who have some cards with no game text on them, But their other cards will say things like +1 fight for every card with no game text that you played, or card text, whatever the exact wording is. So you'll have a bunch of cards with no text, but then other cards that take advantage of those cards with no text. And I suppose maybe, and Black Bolt is one of those heroes. Maybe it reflects the fact that he doesn't speak or can't speak. Well, he can speak, but he shouldn't, you know. Anyway, Captain Marvel. Love me some Captain Marvel. This is an example of a multi-class card. These little symbols over here, that little fist and this little blue thing, whatever it is, not the Avengers thing, but the other two symbols here. Those are classes. So she has two classes considered to be two colors, green and blue. You can see it's green on top, blue on the bottom. There's Captain Marvel. Here's a nice old man Logan with a mustachioed Hulk. So there's that. Black Panther, another character that I really like. And I really like that picture. Good one there. One of the villain groups is Domain of Apocalypse. I'm a huge fan of Blink. I loved the comic Exiles. So there's a nice Blink card. A couple of these groups, I think 3 of the villain groups, have retro artwork, and it's just fantastic. I've always felt that the art in this game is a little dark. I've reviewed the DC deck building game a few times, different variations of that, and really, really praised the artwork. It's a much more bright and colorful game. I find the artwork is beautiful in this game generally, in Legendary, but it just seems a little dark. So these some of these retro artwork cards really brighten things up. This is from Domain of Apocalypse again. There's Rogue. Really a nice throwback. Sentinel Terrorists. This is really going back a ways. There's Kitty Pryde. Look at that, the old uniform. And then a classic cover from Sentinel Terrorists. I mean, that's Days of Future Past right there. That's the stuff. A Limbo villain. Classic Nightcrawler. You gotta love it. Another one of my favorite characters. Then in the Ultimates group, you have... this isn't all of them, but there's Ultimate Captain America. I like that one. And then I'm a fan of the old-fashioned Kree Warrior Captain Marvel. Not the blue and red costume with the star on it, but sort of the Kree military look. So there's a Ultimate Captain Marvel. I love that look. I love the artwork. And then, of course, I've got to share Zombie Green Goblin. And I love all the zombie characters, but this is one of the best pictures, which is Zombie Loki. I really dig that one. There's Zombie Mysterio and Zombie MODOK, which is great because giant-headed MODOK as a zombie. Zombie Baron Zemo. Venom. Mr. Sinister. And Madam Hydra, I think, are all the zombies. So that's just an example of some of the artwork, and I really, really enjoy the artwork for the most part in this game. So I love most of the characters in here, and I say most of because I'm not really familiar with Proxima Midnight, and I think Maximus is one of the Inhumans. Maybe. Those are the 2 characters I really don't know. But all the rest, like I said, I love Doctor Strange, Ultimate Spider-Man, Black Panther. We've played with Lady Thor, Captain Marvel. I like Kitty Pryde. The villains seem pretty cool so far. I've only played with Zombie Green Goblin, but I definitely want to jump into some of the other masterminds, some of the other villain groups. The sidekicks are really nice cards. They they're helpful, and some of these schemes are really tough. So you need that extra help, I think. And I love that they've now added the ability to play, for one player anyway, to play as the mastermind. It's not something we're going to do every game, but it's nice to have that option when I'm feeling a little evil. And for those of you who may not know, there is a Legendary Villains base set, which is essentially Legendary Marvel, but you play as villains trying to stop the heroes from saving the day, as opposed to playing heroes trying to stop the villains and their scheme. And there is an option, a variant here, if you're having someone play as the mastermind, where you can incorporate, instead of the mastermind recruiting heroes from the headquarters, there's going to be a section of villains, and they can straight up recruit villains. Instead of having to convert the heroes to evil, they can recruit villains. So all sorts of really interesting new options that Secret Wars Volume 1 brings to the Legendary table. This game in general is a lot of fun. It's not even getting into the fact that there's Legendary... crap, I have to look. Where is it? Legendary Encounters... Alien, and Legendary Encounters Predator. And these games can be mixed and matched. They don't always mesh perfectly, but the Legendary Aliens, we haven't done it yet, but I cannot wait to throw some Marvel heroes in there and have Wolverine and Deadpool and Star-Lord fighting xenomorphs. It's just going to be wild, I think. But this, maybe throws Doctor Strange in there. See if magic works against those pesky aliens. I highly recommend this. If you're a fan of Legendary, this is a must-have. Some of the other... I have every expansion, of course, because I love this game. But some of the others, if you're not a Spider-Man fan, you're not necessarily going to pick up the Spider-Man expansion. If for some crazy reason you're not a Guardians of the Galaxy fan, maybe you don't pick up the Guardians expansion. That's fine, but I think this is the first expansion for the game I would call essential. Which I guess in the truest sense of the word, that's not really accurate. Because obviously you can play the base game without this, but this really adds so much to it. The new sidekicks, the chance to play as a mastermind, just great characters. The Living Dead, Rise of the Living Dead mechanic. I think that's what it's actually called. Yeah, Rise of the Living Dead. Really can get you. You're losing victory points and adding bad guys back into the city, making it tougher. And the other thing, that's what I forgot. Some of the villains in the villain deck, I think it's basically if they escape, they become an additional mastermind. So all of a sudden you've got two masterminds that you have to defeat. And each one of those villains has text for a Master Strike. So if you flip over a Master Strike card, your main mastermind is going to hit you, and then your secondary mastermind is going to hit you. You can get a third one and a fourth one. It's craziness. This game is tough. I'm reaching over for the box because I am going to just give you a quick example of some of the other ambition cards, because I know I just threw that one out at you. So here's one. It costs 4 fight to play. Each other player that has exactly 6 cards reveals a tech hero or puts 2 cards from their hand on top of their deck. So basically they lose 2 cards from their hand if they don't have a tech hero. And when you play one of these, when you pay the 4 fight, let's say, to play this, it goes in your discard pile. So say you have 4, your maximum number of cards in your ambition row. You play this, it goes in your discard pile. You're down to 3. So then when you flip your next one, you don't even have to choose if you want to discard one. No, I checked. Maybe I missed it. It does not say if you run out of cards in your ambition deck. It doesn't say that you shuffle up your discard pile and turn it into a new deck. So I may have to check the frequently asked questions. At this point, I'm assuming, since it doesn't say it, you don't do it. If you run out of ambition cards, then you're out of ambition cards. Except, of course, you'll always have the first one. So let's see. There's some cheap ones. This one costs 2. Put a hero from the HQ on the bottom of the hero deck. That's simple. Put this card under the Mastermind card. That Mastermind gets +3 fight until the start of your next turn. Then discard this card. And it costs 3 fight to play this. Just makes the Mastermind a little harder to defeat. Excuse me. And I know there's a card, at least one card, that lets you do the same thing to a villain in the city. Here's one that costs 1. Put this card on a hero in the HQ. Players can't recruit that hero until the start of your next turn. Then discard this card. So if you see a hero that you want to recruit and you're afraid someone else might get to him first, play this card. They can't do it, and then on your turn, boom, you can pick him up. This one costs 9. This card becomes a scheme twist that takes place immediately. Takes effect, excuse me, immediately. There's one that costs 10. Did I pass it up already? There's some 8s. There we go. Here's a 10. Add a random new Mastermind to the game with 1 tactic. So again, multiple Masterminds. It can really make it tough for the hero players to get anywhere when they're playing against the Mastermind. So, yeah, I really like that. I think I've covered everything. I showed you some of the cool artwork, covered all the new characters, new villains. I didn't cover all of the different villain groups, but I gotta save something for you to find out for yourself. I guess that's it. I recommend it. Definitely 5 out of 5 for this. I can't wait to see what's going to be in Volume 2. I'm not sure when that comes out. A friend of mine said they have it on their Christmas wish list, so I assume it's going to be in December, but I don't know. I haven't looked that up recently. So there you have it. Legendary Secret Wars Volume 1 for the Marvel deck building game. Absolutely fantastic. Pick up a base set, pick up this set, and just have a blast. That's it for the Low Budget Review Show. I'm your host, Eric Smith, and until next time, read more books.